The United States has a problem, and the war in Iran is making it a lot worse. What's playing out right now in the Middle East isn't just a military story. It's bleeding straight into the financial system. If this conflict drags on, it won't only be Washington that feels it. Ordinary savers, retirees, and anyone holding dollar assets could be pulled into the fallout. For the last 25 years, market behavior during crises has been very predictable. Whenever the world got hit with a major shock, investors rushed into US government bonds. After the 9/11 attacks in 2001, Treasury yields fell as money poured into what was seen as the safest asset on Earth. When the world shut down in 2020 during the pandemic, yields fell again. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, investors once more ran to US Treasuries, and yields dropped. The pattern was simple. Fear rises, risk assets sell off, and capital hides in US debt. This time, that pattern is breaking. The war in Iran and the wider Middle East has unleashed another wave of uncertainty. But instead of yields falling, they are rising. That means investors are not stampeding into treasuries. In many cases, they're selling them. In other words, what used to be the ultimate safe haven is starting to look a lot less risk-free. So what changed? Part of the answer lies in what central banks have been doing over the last few years. Major foreign holders, especially China and other countries in the BRICS orbit, have steadily cut back their holdings of US debt. That trend accelerated after 2022, when the US and its allies froze and seized Russia's dollar reserves in response to the invasion of Ukraine. That move sent a loud signal to the rest of the world. If your reserves sit inside the Western financial system, they can be turned off, frozen, or confiscated with the stroke of a pen. Once that trust is broken, it doesn't easily come back. Now layer the Iran war and oil into this picture. Iran itself produces less than 5% of the world's oil, but roughly 90% of its exports go to one key customer, China. Beijing will not be happy watching its main Iranian supplier come under attack. That's why some analysts think China could respond not by sending troops, but by quietly selling more of its US treasuries and shifting further away from the dollar. On top of that, Iran has leverage over one of the most important choke points on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz. Around 20% of global oil flows through this narrow passage. Any serious escalation that threatens Hormuz doesn't just hit Iran and its neighbors. It hits fuel prices everywhere. Higher oil and gas prices feed straight into inflation, especially in the United States, where households and businesses are already dealing with elevated costs. All of this is colliding with a nasty timing problem in Washington. The US government is running into a massive refinancing wall. Trillions of dollars of existing debt are maturing and need to be rolled over at today's higher interest rates. Some of that has already been refinanced, but there is still a huge wave ahead, on the order of nearly $10 trillion in the 2026 timeframe alone. Every point higher in interest rates makes that rollover more expensive. Here's where it hits you and me when we're talking about trillions that need to be refinanced. It is absolutely in the government's interest to keep rates as low as possible. But we're in an environment where several forces are pushing in the opposite direction. Oil prices are likely to go up if the war spreads. That pushes inflation higher. Stress in the banking system and private credit markets increases the odds that the Federal Reserve has to step in with more liquidity, effectively more money creation. At the same time, rising yields on treasuries are a kind of vote of no confidence from investors, forcing the government to offer even higher interest to attract buyers. That leaves policymakers in a classic trap. If they push interest rates up to fight inflation, they make it much harder and more expensive to refinance the debt mountain. If they keep rates low or are forced to buy more of their own bonds to keep yields in check, they risk letting inflation run hotter, which erodes the value of the dollar over time. Historically, when faced with this choice, governments tend to accept higher inflation rather than default. Letting prices rise quietly reduces the real burden of debt. The worrying part is that US Treasuries are no longer automatically viewed as the unquestioned safe haven they once were. When investors move away from US debt in a moment that should be Treasury bullish, it suggests a deeper structural shift. To compensate for that lost demand, yields have to go higher. But higher yields are exactly what the US does not want right now, given its refinancing needs. That tension is the core of the problem. This isn't just about the United States either. Around the world, public debt levels have climbed to record highs. At the same time, trust in fiat currencies, money created by governments, is eroding. One of the clearest signs of that is what central banks themselves are doing. The same institutions that create and manage national currencies have been quietly buying physical gold at the fastest pace seen in the modern era. Gold cannot be printed, devalued, or sanctioned in the same way a digital reserve asset can. Central banks are not just talking about diversification, they are acting on it. That has implications for ordinary savers as large investors and central banks move away from government debt and toward hard assets. Someone still has to absorb the new supply of bonds. Increasingly, that someone becomes the central bank of each country. In the US, the Federal Reserve, acting as buyer of last resort. The more the Fed has to support the market for treasuries, the more it risks fueling the very inflation that eats away at the purchasing power of everyone who holds dollars. For households, inflation is not an abstract macroeconomic concept. It's a direct attack on savings, retirement plans, and any asset denominated in the local currency. If yields are rising because investors are stepping away from US debt, while at the same time the Fed is under pressure to stabilize markets and keep the government funded, the likely outcome is more money creation and more long-term erosion of the currency's value. That is why so many people who think about this professionally are looking for ways to hold part of their wealth outside of the dollar and outside of government IOUs. For some, that means physical assets like gold and silver, which have a long history as stores of value precisely because they cannot be created out of thin air. For others, it means a broader mix of real assets and diversification away from any single currency system. What the Iran war has done is bring all of these threads together at once. Geopolitical conflict, energy shocks, a fragile bond market, and a historic debt rollover. The old pattern, panic hits. Everyone runs into treasuries, yields fall, and the US benefits from being the world's safe haven is starting to crack. If that crack widens, the cost will not be limited to Washington's balance sheet. It will show up in higher prices weaker currencies, and the slow but steady erosion of everyday savings.